You are going to die. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, next week, or next month. You may have 10, 20, or 50 more years of life, but it is going to go by faster than you can even imagine. How are you using that time? Get your coffee. I was driving home from taking my kids to school the other morning. We live in this beautiful valley in North San Diego, and as I was coming down the hill into the valley, there was still the lingering fog in the valley. Absolutely stunning view. And I was reminded of the words of the Apostle James in James chapter 4, where he says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there. We will buy and sell and make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time, and then it vanishes away." That reminded me immediately of Isaiah 40, which was where we were at yesterday in our video. And in Isaiah 40, we see there in that passage the prophecy of the one who would come to prepare the way before Christ. We know from the New Testament that that one is John the Baptist. And God predicts the coming of John, and there is this exchange, as it were, between God, who is calling this individual, the voice, which is to proclaim the way of the Lord, and the voice himself, he asks God, "What is the message that you want me to cry out?" And God responds. In Isaiah 40, beginning at verse 6, he says, "This is the message I want you to cry out. All flesh is as grass, and all its loveliness is like the flower of the field. The grass withers and the flower fades because the breath of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are as grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of the Lord stands forever." So life is like a vapor. It appears for a little time and then it vanishes away. All flesh is as grass. The grass withers and the flower fades. Life is tremendously short. It doesn't seem so when you are in your teens or your 20s, but by the time that you have children, time seems to speed up very quickly. You realize how quickly time goes by when you see your kids grow incredibly fast, which is why Paul's words in Ephesians 5 are so important. Paul says this, "Awake, you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is." Another English translation translates those words, redeeming the time, there as make the most of every opportunity. God has a purpose. He has a plan for everything that he has created, even for you. What we would call a telos, the ultimate end, the ultimate objective or purpose for which a thing is made. He has that for you. And Paul says, do not be unwise. A nice apostolic way of saying, don't be a fool, but understand what God's will or his wish, his plan, his purpose is for you, his telos. I think just the thought that God has a will, a wish, plan, purpose, or object for you, that may be an encouraging thing. I think it should be. The current worldview in our culture is that you are the product of random chance and mutation over billions of years, and that you have no ultimate purpose or destiny. I think that that kind of thinking, it leads to a despairing nihilism, which is exactly what we observe in our culture. So much so that I think that the worldview that is promoted in our culture is pathologically dangerous. It is a deadly way of thinking. Isaiah chapter 41 begins to present one of the most amazing prophecies in all of the Old Testament. From chapter 41 to chapter 45 of Isaiah, we have the prophecy of Israel's deliverance from Babylon by Cyrus, king of Persia. And this deliverance would not come about for more than 160 years. In fact, Cyrus, king of Persia, he wouldn't even be born for another 100 years from the time that Isaiah is prophesying this. And the children of Israel wouldn't even end up in captivity for another 110 years. So it is an amazing passage. And when you read the opening of it in chapter 41, you see that God planned and he created and then raised up Cyrus for a specific purpose. It was his will. It was God's wish and plan to do this. Now, you may not have a calling in God's will to do something quite as spectacular as Cyrus, but God has created and called you just the same for a purpose. And if that is true, then we should do everything we can to understand what his will is and to no longer live the rest of our short time in the flesh here on earth, living after the lusts of men, but for the will of God. Something to think about. We'll see you next time.